Hello and welcome to this 16 lesson video series that'll help you get started with Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. Now, these lessons and the accompanying document with supplemental readings are designed to take someone who is a complete novice, who's never written any code before or maybe just written a little bit of code a while back, and help them be productive in writing real-world applications within just a few hours. So if this describes you, you're in the right spot. If you're already an experienced developer or an experienced .NET developer, quite honestly, there'll be probably some better ways for you to spend your time. If you're looking for videos on advanced concepts or new features in Visual Basic 2005, Visual Studio 2005, or any of the latest development products from Microsoft, please navigate to www.learnvisualstudio.net for instructional video tutorials aimed at all skill levels. If you're just getting started, the aim of this series is to help you become productive quickly. And with that as our goal, please keep in mind that there are many concepts that I'll either gloss over or I'll ignore completely. So you may want to use this resource as a good introduction. However, the videos are not intended to replace reference books or online help that comes with Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. So I recommend at the end of this series to also dedicate yourself to some books and online resources like www.learnvisualstudio.net for instructional videos to help you come to more complete knowledge of the Visual Basic language and application development environment. Developing software, especially with a language like Visual Basic and a software application like Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition, is just a lot of fun. Now, sure, it can be a little intimidating at first, but if you take it a little bit at a time, just like everything else in life, you'll start seeing results. And in my mind, there's nothing more gratifying than imagining some software application that I want to build, and then seeing it come together and working through all the problems and all the hurdles, and then finally seeing the end result, and even letting other people use it. And I hope after this series of lessons you get infected by the programming bug and you begin to realize how exciting this really can be. Okay, so it's time to get started. The lessons are arranged in the following way. Lessons 1 through 3 focus on workflow of building applications and getting comfortable with how to navigate around the Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition interface. Lessons 4 through 7 will focus on the Visual Basic programming language itself, as well as an introduction to the .NET framework. Lessons 8 through 11 will focus on working with data and then displaying data from data sources like databases and XML files and handling the errors that come up in your application while it's running. And then lesson 12 through 16 will demonstrate the creation of an entire application from the beginning to the end involving design, development, testing, and deploying your application. The application that we'll build in the last 5 lessons will be an RSS reader. And if you're not familiar with the term RSS, that stands for Really Simple Syndication, and it's one of the latest trends on the internet. It allows websites, especially those websites that update their content often, like blogs, to publish a short description of new articles as they're posted on the website. So users can subscribe to an RSS feed, which is simply a URL on the web that contains the title of the article, the description, and a hyperlink so people can read the actual article. And so to subscribe to a feed, the user will need a program that knows how to interpret an RSS feed and then periodically checks each news feed that the user subscribed to so it can determine if any of his favorite websites have new content available. Many popular websites have these little orange buttons with the word RSS, or sometimes it has the word XML. This lets you know that an RSS feed is available for that website. In our application, we'll allow the user to subscribe to RSS feeds, which we'll call channels, and then the application will monitor each of those channels for any new items that may appear. And once they appear, we can read their description, even see in a little browser window the actual web page that they point to and expand that out to a full browser so that the individual can read the full article. Also, we'll be able to do things like organize channels into folders. So you can see here that I've got blog feeds versus tech news, and then also add, edit, and delete folders, add, edit, delete channels, and then also refresh the RSS feeds by going to the internet, looking at each of the channels and finding the RSS feed for that channel, and updating the database that supports this application behind the scenes. But we have a lot of information to cover before we get to this point. But I wanted to dangle a carrot out in front of you to stay engaged in this series of lessons. Just about everything we learn in the next 10 lessons will build up to creating that application. So make sure you understand each concept before moving on. In the remainder of this lesson, I want to start you off quickly by showing you the workflow for creating an application using Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. If you haven't done so already, please take this opportunity to download the latest version of Visual Basic 2005 Express from http://msdn.microsoft.com/express. There are several Express Edition tools available from that location. Find the Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition link and download appropriately. The installation process is pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to cover that in this lesson. And so from this point on, I'm going to assume that you already had the application installed and ready to go. If not, please do that before we get much farther. And you may want to follow along with me as I demonstrate how to use Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. Don't forget to use the pause button on Windows Media Player to catch up to me, or use the slider at the bottom to review something that I just said. So let's get started by talking about the basic steps of creating applications. And we'll begin by creating the most simple application we possibly can. All we want to do is create a Windows application, which is also known as a Windows Forms application, and we'll add a single button onto a form. And when the user clicks our button, we'll display a pop-up message that says Hello World. Now, a Hello World application is usually the first program that you build, regardless of the programming language or regardless of the programming tool, because it helps you see the entire workflow of creating a program without having to introduce so much complexity so early into the learning process. So let's begin by using our mouse cursor and going to the File menu and then selecting the New Project option. Whenever we do, a new project dialog appears, and this allows us to select a template for the type of application we want to build. In this case, we want to select Windows Application, and then also change the name of the application from its default name to something like Hello World. Once we've changed that, then we're going to select the OK button, and now Visual Basic 2005 creates a new project for us with a single form in that project. Now at this point we have a fully functioning Windows application. We didn't have to do anything, it's all automatically created for us. We can use this little button here, the Start Debugging button, the little button that looks like a Run button or a Start button. And let's just run the application right now and see what happens. As you can see, I have a real application. I can resize the application, I can move it around. Notice that it has some of the default attributes that a Windows application has, like the little close button, the expand or the resize, the minimize button. It also has this little control box over here that allows us to size, minimize, close, and so forth. So if you recall, what we were going to do with this application was we were going to put a single button on our form. So to do that, we're going to use something called the toolbox, which contains a number of controls that we can place on our forms. And we can scroll up and down and see all the controls here. And we'll talk about this more in lesson 2 or 3. But what I want to do for right now is to grab a button and drag it from its toolbox area and then drop it onto our form. Okay, to drag it, I just hold down the mouse cursor, and to drop it, I let go. So I've dragged 2 instances of a button on the form. I'm going to delete one of these by making sure it's selected. You can see the selected one with the little handles on it, and then hitting the delete key on my keyboard. So now we're back to 1 button. Let's run our application one more time and see what happens. Again, we have a fully functional application with a button, and notice that I'm able to click it. I can hold down the button, and notice when I do that, there's like a little grayed out. It looks like a 3-dimensional button where you're pushing down on it and then releasing the button. Okay, so it has different states in that regard, but it still doesn't do anything. And in order for it to do something meaningful, what we're going to have to do is write some code. Now this is a little bit tricky, so watch closely what I'm about to do here. I'm going to double-click the button So I'm going to use my mouse cursor, hover over it, and then I'm going to use my mouse to double click. And when I do, I get a different screen that appears within the Visual Basic Express Edition IDE. And what we have here is what's called a event handler. So whenever somebody clicks our button, we're going to write code that will handle that situation. We're going to talk about event handlers at length in lessons 3 and 4 and throughout the rest of the series. So I don't want to get too wrapped up in that and just yet. But follow along as I write some code that will react to the action that the user has taken of clicking this button. So I'm going to pop open a message box, and to do that I'm going to type in message box dot show. I'm going to use an open parenthesis, and I'm going to use some quotation marks, an open quotation mark, and then I'm going to type in hello world. Then I'm going to put another quotation mark and close the parentheses just like that. And I can even hit the enter key on my keyboard. Okay, so notice now that I have one line of code within my event handler for the button one click event. Now, how do I navigate between the form view and this code view? Well, simply put, I can use these tabs at the top. So here, if I use this tab, I'm looking at the design view. I'm looking at the forms designer, and every form has a code view behind it. So I can use the tab view, or I can just double click and it will automatically open it for me as a little bit of a convenience. So now let's run our application by using our run button. And I'm going to click my button. And when I do, notice that I get a little message box that pops open that says Hello World. So I can click that, and I can run this multiple times, and we've got a real application. Now, admittedly, it doesn't do a whole lot, but we've been able to walk through the steps of creating the application, designing the form, and writing code behind an event handler. Now at this point you probably didn't understand everything that I did, and that's okay. We're going to use the remainder of the lessons to really thoroughly inspect everything that just went on here. But I wanted to give you this complete picture of everything that goes along with creating and building an application, as small as it might be. So the next thing that we need to do is save our application, and to do that I can either select the File menu and select Save All, or I can just use a button on my toolbar that says Save All. And when I do, I get this Save Project dialog box. Now this is very important. Your applications are not saved to your hard drive until you explicitly save them. Okay, so if we were to just shut down the machine right now, just hit the off button on our computer, all would be lost. That would be bad. So we want to, very early on, as we're building an application, save the project. And saving the project involves giving it a name. As you can see, we have a default name that we originally gave it whenever we were creating a new project. And then also select a location on our hard drive where that application should be saved. Notice that it'll be saved into the My Documents folder, Visual Studio 2005 Projects, under a directory called Hello World. And you notice here that it also has create a directory for the solution. We'll leave that checked for right now. We'll talk about solutions in just a moment. For right now, I'm going to accept all the defaults and then click the Save button on this dialog. And now we've successfully saved this project to our hard drive. So now we can come back the next day or the day, in the future and make changes to this project and work on it again. So let's do this. Let's go to our file system using the Windows Explorer, and let's take a look at where our source code is saved on our hard drive. Notice that I'm in the My Documents folder, and if you recall, we saved it into the Visual Studio 2005 folder in the projects folder. Notice when we look at projects, we see the Hello World folder. So I'm going to drill in there and notice that we have all the files that are used within our project. Now let me define what a project is. A project is a collection of files that all get compiled together in order to create an executable file, whether that's a .exe file or a .dll file. Now in our particular case, since we're working with a Windows Forms application, it's going to create a .exe file for us. And where does it create that .exe? Well, there's a special folder here called the bin folder. And you'll notice if we go to the debug directory of the bin folder that we have a series of files. The file at the very top is helloworld.exe, and if I double click this, it actually executes the application that we developed up to this point. Okay, so a project is a collection of files that all get compiled into a single executable file. And you'll notice here that we have this structure within Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. And this right-hand side, we have this window called a Solution Explorer. And these are all the files that are contained within our project. You see, here's our project file called Hello World. And then here's the one form that we have, our Form 1. If we were to double-click this form, notice that it brings open the designer view in the main area. So these are the files that are required in order to create our Hello World application. Now our particular application only has one form, but in a real application that was more useful, we might have dozens of forms within the application, and if we did, all of those files that represented the forms would be listed here within our Solution Explorer. So just to run down again the thought of what a project is an organizational unit that combines all the files that are necessary in order to create an entire application, a .exe file. Also, there's another organizational unit called a solution. You remember whenever we went to go save our project and it asked us, do we want to create a folder for the solution as well? We just left it checked as the default, yes, we want to create a solution as well. A solution is another organizational construct that allows us to group multiple projects together. Okay, each project would create its own executable file, but those projects might have interdependencies. Now that's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're looking at right now. But if we were to have multiple projects under one organizational unit called a solution, we would have all of those projects listed here within our Solution Explorer. So I just wanted you to be aware of the concept that solutions can contain projects, and projects contain files that create executable files or .dll files. So besides being able to view all the files that are within a given project, the Solution Explorer has another very important purpose within our application development efforts. If we were to close down the tabs within our main area by clicking the Close button off to the right-hand side of each of the tabs, and we needed to get back and work with that particular form again, what we can do is either double-click the representation of that form file within our Solution Explorer, and it will open up the default view, which in this case is the form designer. Now, we already noticed one way of getting to the code view, but there's another way to do that as well. We would need to select that form within our Solution Explorer, and then select the View Code button, and that will pop open the code view for our Form 1. We can also select the View Designer button in order to go back to the form view. Now the Solution Explorer can also allow us to add or remove files from our project. So what we can do here is right-click on the project within the Solution Explorer and then click Add, New Item, and we get the Add New Item dialog box that would allow us to add another form to our project, or a dialog box, or one of a number of different types of form templates that are provided for us within Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. I'm going to cancel this for right now. We'll come back to that later. Or I can remove a file that's currently within my project by right-clicking the file and then selecting Delete. I can also rename the file and do a bunch of other things as well. Now, let's talk for a moment about how to close our project and then open it back up, because invariably what we're going to want to do is go home or stop coding for the evening and then come back to the work that we've been working on, just like we would a Word document. If we were to work on it a little bit one day and then close the document down, the next day we come and we want to open that document up and work on it some more. The same idea is true for projects within Visual Basic 2005 Express Edition. So what we can do is select File, Close Project, and what that will do is remove it from the Solution Explorer. You can see it's no longer open within Visual Basic 2005 Express. Now, in order to open it back up, all we need to do is go to the File menu and select Open Project, and then navigate to our My Projects folder, find the project that we want to work on, and then select the .sln file, or alternatively, we can select the .vbproj file. Either way will work. We'll go ahead and select this one for now and select the Open button, and then it loads our project back into our workspace so we can begin working on it again. Now finally, we're going to be writing a lot of code. And one of the things that I want to introduce fairly early on into your career is this concept of debugging. Now what does it mean to debug? Well, in the most simplest terms that I can put it in, it's the ability for you to step through each line of code as it's executing, or in other words, you can control how quickly or how slowly the code executes. And you can watch as each line of code executes, so you can pinpoint problems that occur within your applications. And in order to enable debugging, what we'll need to do is set a breakpoint within our code. Now we only have one line of code, so this makes it pretty easy. I'm going to get to the code view again by selecting form1.vb in the tab, and then finding the line of code I want to set a breakpoint on. I'm going to put a breakpoint on this messagebox.show line by going over here in this left side column and then just clicking it, and notice when I do, a little red ball appears right underneath my mouse cursor, and you can see the line of code is highlighted in red. This means that the code execution will stop at that line of code. Now to begin the debugging, I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing up to this point, and that is use the Start Debugging button on our toolbar, click it, and then run the application. Our application is running just fine, no problems. We can minimize, maximize it. We haven't stopped any code execution at this point, but when I click the button, notice that now that red line of code becomes yellow. That indicates that this is the current line of code that's about to execute. Notice also that we have this little yellow arrow that points to the current line of code that's executing. And at this point, I can step through each line of code using some more buttons on my toolbar here. This step into, step over, or step out of. Now we're just going to use the step into button right now. So I'm going to click this button, and when I do, notice that it then displays or executes that line of code, which in this case is displaying that message box on screen to our user. We'll click the OK button, and notice that it continues to execute the next line of code, which is the end sub. It's the last line within our event handler. And then we can continue to use the step into button, and now we are back in control of the application. So when we're talking about debugging, we're talking about setting a breakpoint and watching the application as it executes within our IDE, our development environment that we're working in. So, phew, that was quite a bit of information for the first lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. If there's something that didn't make sense, please watch it again or just continue on, and some of the questions that you might have in your mind might be answered in the upcoming lessons. And this would also be a good time to read through the first 2 or 3 chapters in the accompanying document that you can find at the same place where you downloaded this video. And if you enjoyed this video, please visit www.learnvisualstudio.net to download and watch over 400 videos just like this one aimed at all skill levels on many different topics related to C#, Visual Basic, ASP.NET, and more. Thank you.